Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Accrediting a catastrophe. How ANSI, ANAB, and their Chinese allies enabled the Wuhan lab leak, a national warning from QA expert Daryl Guberman. Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Guberman. I've got about 40 plus years experience in quality, background being aerospace, medical implants, materials printing, and plastic distribution, where we dealt with every industry under the sun. Here we go. I have spent decades in the trenches of quality assurance, peeling back the curtain on the global accreditation racket. Tonight and today, in general, I bring you a message that every American needs to hear, one that reveals how our own accreditation bodies were complicit in the deadliest biological failure in modern history. And let's continue. The undeniable fact. The American National Standards Institute, ANSI, and the American National Accrediting Board are not just participants in the global accreditation game. They co-founded the International Accreditation Forum, incorporated in Delaware, which is an association of accreditation bodies, both national and international, along with their sister organization in Australia, the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, which those accreditation bodies are equivalent to ANSI, ANAB. They are also, ANSI, ANAB are also underwriters, which means they take all responsibility, liability for systematic and product failure. Now, here's where it gets dangerous. Between 2015 and 21, the IF was chaired by Zhao Jinwu, a communist Chinese national, who has been involved with our quality since 1994, and at the same time, he was the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services in Beijing, China. He is mandated under the Communist Chinese National, under the Chinese Communist Party. He is mandated under the China National Intelligence Law, Article Number 7, to take our data. That law requires every Chinese citizen and organization to assist in state intelligence efforts, including data collection, espionage, and cyber activity. This man didn't just sit on the board. He controlled the entire structure that oversees the equivalency of accreditation bodies across the world. That includes the China National Accreditation Services, the CNAS, that certified the Wuhan Institute of Virology in 2017. Under the rules of the IF and its sister organization ILAC, headquartered in Australia, all signatories agreed to treat each other's accreditations as equivalent. That means the China National Accreditation Services accredited the Wuhan lab. ANSI and ANAB were legally and professionally bound to recognize that certification as if they had issued it themselves. So let's talk about the lab, shall we? In late 2017 and 18, American scientists went and visited the Wuhan Institute of Virology. According to documentation and statements from the facility, the lab was unprepared without having highly trained technicians. It lacked, again, highly trained technicians and did not meet the staffing or safety conditions necessary to run a high containment biological research lab. And yet, it had a quality certificate. A laboratory quality certificate, no less, issued by the CNAS, backed by the IF, and thereby endorsed by ANSI ANAB. Now remember, too, again, he's the chairman of the IF. At the same time, he's a CNAS of chief executive standing in the laboratory there. And here we go. I will show it to you real quick. There he is. Here's him accepting chairmanship in 2015. And here he is over in Wuhan lab. You cannot make this up. And yet, it had a certificate issued by CNAS, backed by the IF, and thereby endorsed by ANSI ANAB. So the question is why? Why was a lab known to be unprepared handed an international stamp of approval? The answer lies in the corrupt global network of accreditation bodies tied together by the IF and ILAC. Network where ANSI and ANAB act as underwriters for certification schemes they no longer control but still legally endorse. A network where Chinese communist agents sat at the helm of a U.S.-based infrastructure, IAF, during the very years leading up to the outbreak of the virus. You don't need to speculate. you don't need conspiracy theories. You only need to look at what Pamela Sale, a quality assurance vice president of accreditation for ANSI ANAB, said under deposition in Texas, told the public in her deposition in the Austin Monitor. One of the issues is that there is no commonly agreed upon set of standards that forensic labs around the country have to follow. Instead, there are informal guidelines the labs can choose to follow or not. That's not just negligence. That is criminal level complacency or complicity. When Wuhan failed, it wasn't just a Chinese problem. It was a failure of ANSI, ANAB, IF, and ILAC. It was a failure of every U.S. agency and policymaker who allowed our national accreditation system to be infiltrated, globalized, and ultimately hijacked. And one of the worst things is these agencies, like the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Commerce, Department of Justice, and the FDA all sit not just as members. These are only some of the federal agencies, not all. But they're not just members of ANSI, ANAB. They are customers. They pay a fee, and ANSI and ANAB render them as their supplier, some whatever they're doing. And now, we're living in the aftermath. Millions dead, trillions cost, and still no one is held accountable. The reason why is that ANSI and ANAB deal very harmoniously with the American Bar Association. They have the DOJ in their top breast pocket because they're not just a member, they're also a customer. Pam Bondi, you got to do something about that. That's who's leading the DOJ. But did the music change? Did they get themselves out of the grasp of ANSI ANAB? No, she's just as guilty as her predecessors. But I will say what no one else will. The American National Standards Institute and the American National Accrediting Board were co-conspirators in the international accreditation system that allowed Wuhan to operate. They are not neutral. They are not innocent. They are guilty, ladies and gentlemen. And until these institutions are torn down, rebuilt, and removed from foreign entanglements, the next lab leak, whether from China or anywhere else, won't just be possible, it will be inevitable. This is not just a failure of vigilance. It is a failure of integrity, a failure of our leadership, a failure of justice. And I will not stop until every American knows the names ANSI and ANSCAB. ANSI and ANSCAB. Actually, it's ANSI and ANAB. And knows what they allowed to happen under our own flag. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is a fact. I have all the data, all the pertinent data in this booklet. As you can see over here, ANSI and ANAB are the founders of the International Accreditation Forum, sister organization ILAC in Australia. You can't make this up, ladies and gentlemen. I do this because this is a catastrophe. Nobody's going to touch ANSI ANAB and their underwriters. So when that Alaska door pops off, I call up the Alaska or some of their attorneys and say, we got enough money, Daryl. It's fine. We're doing fine. I said, you got a $100 million company. Who's the underwriter? Who takes responsibility of that? Oh, why? Because the American Bar Association was probably massaging the back while I was talking with them. And you have the DOJ. The DOJ is a disgusting agency. Pam Bondi. You got to get... Pam Bondi is, if she doesn't know, now she should know. And if she doesn't do anything about it, then we are still being Bidenized. Bidenized. You know what that is? You got Americanized, Bidenized, galvanized, and anodized. I may tell you in another video. You know, anodized protects aluminum from corrosion. Galvanized protects steel. Bidenized. He said, we have to do something about China. They're going to eat our lunch while he's taking money from them. Nice. It's disgusting. 203-556-1493. And by the way, TikTok, we have the data. So tell your crawlers to move around. We didn't say anything wrong with this video. And I thank you. 203-556-1493.